Hello everyone and welcome to the HR Summit meeting. My name is Jan and I'll be moderating today's call. Our speaker today is Ken Barrett, Global Chief Diversity Officer at General Motors, presenting a GM Segment Inclusion Survey. We'll turn to the presentation in just a moment, but first I want to go over the web conference instructions. Everyone is currently in mute so that the background noise does not become distracting for the other participants. To view today's presentation as the screens change live, you may go to the link that was sent to you in your reminder email. Once there, you may click anywhere on the page and you'll see a pop-up that allows you to make a comment. Feel free to ask a question by posting it as a comment. We'll make sure all of them are answered. For the newer participants in the group, it might be useful to review some of the main benefits you can take advantage of as a member at no additional charge. First are the live monthly web conference meetings, which you've already dialed into today. I hope you find these useful, and we have an excellent lineup, which you can see by going to our website schedule page. Second, we do record all of these, so if you're traveling or stuck in another meeting, you can log in at your leisure, and the full archives of past meetings are available to you with a number of interesting topics. Third, get to know the other members. By logging in, you can see all of their profiles, and we're glad to make any introductions if wished. Fourth, if you're wrestling with any key issues or decisions, we strongly encourage you to reach out to the other members, and our site makes it very easy to post questions. The seniority and experience of your fellow members makes this the best possible forum to get advice from others who've probably dealt with the same issues and can give you sound advice on what worked and what did not. Fifth, we really encourage site visits. If you've not visited others' offices to have a great discussion on best practices and see their facilities, please do so. You can log in to see the other members' companies and cities, so feel free to reach out, or we're happy to make introductions. Sixth, we also generate executive summaries of meetings, including the key takeaways and learning nuggets, so that you can reference them and put them right into action. Seventh, our members are very busy, so we started a service where we pick out the top 6 most interesting articles among thousands at hundreds of sites to keep you abreast and ensure you don't miss the key ones. Lastly is our Book of the Month summary that you can either read or listen to as you commute. Each month we will be selecting the most interesting book, then summarizing the ideas, so within minutes you can absorb the key takeaways. There are many other benefits, of course, but I wanted to highlight some and ask you to keep a lookout in your inbox for a number of these each month. That takes care of the housekeeping items. Give me just a few moments now to pull up the speaker's presentation and introduce him. Okay, all set. Now before I turn the call over, I'd like to tell you a little about our speaker today. As General Motors' first Global Chief Diversity Officer, Ken Barrett leads GM's diversity and inclusion portfolio, which includes workforce diversity strategy, empowering employee resource groups, and fostering an inclusive culture that promotes diversity of thought to help GM compete and win in the marketplace. Prior to joining GM, Barrett, a retired Navy captain, served as the Undersecretary of Defense's Acting Director of the Office of Diversity Management and Equal Opportunity in Washington, D.C. He also served 5 years of award-winning performance as the U.S. Navy's Diversity Director, where he achieved historic levels of minority and female officer additions and transformational work-life balance initiatives. Ken continues to set the bar high and is regarded as a thought leader and subject matter expert in global diversity. Thank you, Ken, so much for being with us today. Just say next when you wish the slides to advance, and the floor is all yours.
Well, hey, thank you very much, Jan, and it's great to be on the call with all of you today. And you can go to the next slide, Jan. I want to be able to just also say, first and foremost, I know it's been unprecedented times for all of us. I hope everybody out there is staying well and safe. Just a little bit about our company. We make, really the best cars, crossovers, SUVs, and trucks in the industry. And just so you know, from a footprint standpoint, we're a global company, over 170,000 employees, plus another 100,000 in our joint ventures in China, speaking over 70 languages, over 400 facilities on 5 continents, and I would tell you over 12,000 dealers in 125 countries. So, again, very much a global operation. And we sold over 7 million vehicles in 2019, and I would tell you that right now we actually sell more vehicles outside of the United States than we do in the United States. I would say as of recently, especially with COVID-19, we're now actually making ventilators, and we're doing that at our Kokomo plant, and we're also producing masks in China, Korea, Canada, and the United States. So we've been involved with the COVID-19 effort. But I would be remiss not to talk about the COVID-19 and really how that's impacted our business and many of the businesses out there. You know, certainly for us, it started early on with our operations in China and Korea, and has kind of continued to move on as we get here into the United States. And certainly in South America now, where some of the hot spots are, we continue to have, continuing challenges, although we are now back up manufacturing in the United States, Canada, Korea, and China. So certainly moving forward on that end. Also unprecedented times with respect to what's going on in Minneapolis. I know we've all been following that, and I know for anybody that's in the D&I space, I know many companies have been responding aggressively, and I would say our chairman and CEO, Mary Barrett, has also put strong messages out with respect to that, and we're moving forward to actually institute what she's calling the Inclusion Advisory Board, which will inform our senior leadership team, and she will chair that board. So we're actively doing that today. So if you go to the next slide, Jan. So today, just a quick agenda slide, and we'll go on to the next one after that. Kind of what does inclusion mean to you? And I want that to start as a thought starter, and maybe as we get questions that I can address at the end. Just something on how we actually go about measuring it has really been the focus of what this presentation is about for us. It's been a journey for us. We've been using the Burson model, which is by Deloitte. It is certainly one model, not the only. We wanted to be able to make sure that we were more aggressive around being able to get data behind inclusion, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then, how do you measure inclusion? I'd like it to be a discussion if we can do that, and if not, we can just take questions and go from there. So next slide, please, Jen. So this is the thought starter, right? What does inclusion mean to you? And I would tell you that we have struggled to be able to take inclusion and take it to the next level. It's easy for organizations, or maybe not so easy, but still, it's something that can be actionable with respect to diversity and looking at demographic numbers, whether it's race, ethnicity, gender, and other types of things that we do globally, certainly with respect to our LGBTQ space, people with disabilities, all of those different types of things of diversity. I think I'm getting a little feedback. I'll try to hold my phone a little bit closer to my mouth here. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Jan, can you hear me?
Yes, Ken, I can. You're fine.
Yes.
You're fine.
Okay, sorry. Great. I just didn't know if I was losing my connection there. So I think it was important we asked that question, too, inside our own organization. I'm sure many of you are asking similar questions inside your own organization. So again, back to my point before I kind of thought I lost connection here is, hey, we measure a lot of diversity metrics, especially around demographics, but then what are we doing with respect to inclusion itself, and are we actually moving the needle? So if you go to the next slide, Jan.
Ken, if
Okay,
you...
so this is...
I think we've got a lag time here after I change it, and I apologize for that. I'll see if I can do something about it, but trust that they are changing.
Okay. Well, I'm not... I'm still here, everybody. So I wanted to kind of take you through this slide, and we'll start on the left-hand side first. And really what we are trying to do is look at this model to get to what we consider the North Star, and we've been using this model from Burson to inclusive culture. And really it's just looking at this maturity map on the left-hand side, kind of going from level 1 where it's just compliance focused to then programmatic D&I, where basically your HR and D&I team are the ones who own D&I. Then going up to level 3, which is leader-owned, and then ultimately being inclusive culture where everyone owns D&I, right? If you look at the blue boxes there, this was the assessment that they had actually had companies take, and they had, I think, 280 companies or so. And in that, that's how they graded themselves. So as you can see, the vast majority put themselves in, either in a level 1, 42%, 31% in level 2, and only 15% and 12%, respectively, that basically put themselves in those upper tiers. And when we actually did our measurement, we were kind of in between level 2 and level 3. And I think that certainly we thought that some leaders owned D&I, but it certainly was not universal across the entire company. So being able to actually make that progression, take those steps, a lot of it's around transparency, but a lot of it is everybody owns D&I and having an inclusive culture. What does that mean? What does that look like? So on the right-hand side of the slide, they have kind of 4 bins here of how you're breaking that up, and to where it's valued and belonging, safe and open, empowered and growing, and respect, and actually they're calling it respect and equity now. So being able to then kind of take each one of those bins and seeing where do you need to actually take action or move things forward to become that inclusive culture. So next slide, Jan. All right, so inclusion is dynamic, right? And this is from the conference board. Many of you may have read this article on there, which I think is, it's a good one to go to if you're trying to just define inclusion inside your organization. But, I mean, I was actually taken by this, that it really is a dynamic thing. It's not static. You're basically going to have, there's going to be things inside you that's going to drive your level of inclusion. And so you might have 2 people working in the same organization in the same working area, and one feels included and one doesn't. It can be in between. It's those relationships in between your own group, or could be inside your own function. And then there can be external factors too, kind of the overarching culture of your organization, or outside external things altogether that may impact inclusion and how you feel about that. This is a working definition that's actually in that conference board piece that we actually use at General Motors. So again, just highlighting respected and valued, trust, fairly treated, a sense of belonging. So really trying to be able to get at what would we actually go about and try to measure. And so if you think about it, most companies, when we did this too, we had maybe a couple of questions, maybe 2 or 3 on our engagement survey that was kind of tied to inclusion. And we certainly get a snapshot from our, what we call it, the Workplace of Choice survey, to try to understand what inclusion was. But we wanted to go deeper, so that's why we kind of took this model. Let's try to break it out into those 4 bins that I mentioned before: valued and belonging, safe and open, empowered and growing, and respect and equity. And then be able to actually come up with questions that we could actually test inside our organization. So next slide, please. All right, so what we did is we actually took kind of a canvas of our U.S. salaried employees first. We had about a 24% response rate, which for us is pretty good. If we get over 20%, we're happy with that. So over 9,000 respondents. And then we had a couple of open-ended questions, one being, what are the attributes of an inclusive leader? And then also a number of the survey respondents, almost 6,000, providing suggestions on how to help foster a more inclusive culture. So again, we got a lot of data that came back from that, and we combed through that. We were able to break it up by race, ethnicity, and gender, and also by function across our U.S. salaried population, to just try to be able to dig in more to understand where we were as a company with respect to inclusion. So next slide, please. So these are the actual questions that we asked in each one of the 4 quadrants: undervalued and belonging, safe and open, empowered and growing, and respect and equity. And I feel valued as an employee back on the left-hand side. My workplace culture provides a sense of belonging for people like me. This is a change to a question. I can be my real self at work, and we had a question that was, I can be my authentic self at work on our workplace of choice survey. But as we combed into it, we came up with the realization that we needed to dig deeper on that particular dimension. And we got a lot of feedback from our employee resource groups that caused us to actually change that to real self. Safe and open, my leader is open to bad news. I can freely ask questions without judgment. My leader is open to new ideas and innovative approaches. I'm comfortable voicing my point of view, even if it differs from my leader. So these are some questions that much more deeper than what we would have in an engagement survey. Empowered and growing, a lot of those, when you see WOC, means it came directly from the workplace of choice survey, so our engagement survey. I'm able to choose how best to complete my work. And then the next one's down, my leader genuinely cares about my career. My leader provides me with developmental opportunities as a result of our conversations. My leader values when I take initiative to learn new skills. And then in the fourth quadrant, I feel that my career development is managed and communicated to me in a fair way. The people in my team respect my thoughts and feelings. We have a work environment that is open and accepts individual differences. Our leader operates in a way that demonstrates GM's commitment to an inclusive culture. And I feel accountable for helping drive inclusion at General Motors. Can you go to the next slide, please, Jan?
I'm on slide 9, Ken.
Okay, thank you. It just popped up. I'm sorry about the delay, folks. I would tell you that we were able to bin the responses into the 5 most favorable perceptions and then the least favorable perceptions. And I don't mind sharing this with you because I think that we were certainly pleased that of the people that responded and the favorable, either agree or strongly agree, 86% felt accountable for helping create an inclusive culture. And then the other one, which I also thought was very telling, was my leader operates in a way that demonstrates GM's commitment to an inclusive culture. So, 84%, again, a very high number, but the others are also 84 and 83. So pretty strong responses with respect to those. On the least favorable side, I would tell you that the first 3 of them are very similar to some of the things that we get from our engagement survey. Kind of around career, or my career development is managed and communicated to me in a fair way. My leader provides me with the developmental opportunities as a result of our conversation, and a leader generally cares about my career. So those things are very much in alignment with the same types of stuff we got from the engagement survey. Now, I would say, and the least favorable, I can be my real self at work. I would just tell you that it kind of dropped. When you look on our workplace of choice survey, where we had asked about being their authentic self, about 84% of folks had said favorable responses to that question when we did it on our engagement survey. When we actually asked the real self question at work, I could be my real self at work, it kind of dropped down to 67%. So we started to dig into that more specifically to try to understand what that dynamic was. And I will tell you, if you can go to the next slide, Jan. And anyway, before I go into this piece, I wanted to just talk to a little bit more that I don't have included in the slides, but I wanted to be able to make sure that you kind of got the information from me directly. So that 70% that we actually had there for the overall canvassing and of the entire U.S. salary population, if I broke it out by race, ethnicity, and gender, I had lower scores on that questions for African Americans. I also had lower scores for that for people with disabilities in the organization. Some segments of the LGBTQ that actually had self-identified on there had some lower scores as well. So for us it gave us an opportunity to kind of break it out, to be able to say, hey, it may look like this across the company, but as you take different individual segments of it, we were able to kind of drill down and say, specifically, these are groups that we could actually have additional focus groups and or empathy interviews to try to get at what we really have or things that we could potentially do in a particular function. We also broke it out by every function. So every people leader in their function got to get this kind of data by their function. And in some locations, some functions which were much larger, like in manufacturing, we were even able to bring it up, by manufacturing facility. So then we kind of had a discussion with the leaders, and we kind of took it to each one of their HRMs to be able to talk about, where they might have had some gaps and where they had lower scores. If they had ones in valued and belonging, how you leveraging your employee interactions to optimize the sense of belonging for your employees. There was respect and equity. Do you know reputational and legal risks around inclusion? How far-reaching are these risks? Do our internal process help us identify and mitigate bias? We stood up this thing in here about an ally program where we have allies that sit on our major HRM committees and basically make sure that it's fair and equitable with respect to stretch assignments, promotional opportunities, and other things in level. We call them proficiency promotions as well, being able to make sure that voice was there to be able to try to identify bias in the process. If it was a safety concern, do we promote safety to include psychological safety and the role it plays in creating an inclusive culture? So again, as we looked at each one of these categories, we wanted to be able to make sure the types of questions that leaders could actually ask to move the needle. And next slide. I'm going to kind of take you through each one, and I wanted, this may be something that is of value to you, it may not. So again, on the left-hand side, it's again valued and belonging, the questions we ask. That top bullet there of how we are leveraging our employee interactions was the one that kind of went to leaders. And then we tried to give them, hey, where you can start. Are you fully utilizing your GM recognition system, and being able to make sure that you're recognizing people equitably. We have this, you see, Yammer. We have kind of our internal Yammer. Are we doing acknowledgments for people on that? Are we fully leveraging our ERG? Have we maximized our, LMS system with the different courses that we have available? The Team GM Cares piece is our volunteer activities. And then also we have the ability to do like a strength finder assessment of your groups. You can actually do those things to be able to determine if there may be some gaps or weaknesses with respect to value and belonging. All right, so next slide, Jan. As we go into safe and open, we kind of took the same approach. We might have put the core message up to the leader up top, but then where you can start, share personal stories that show vulnerability, incorporate safety stories into the beginning of each meeting, and psychological safety being part of that. Encourage innovation with the expectation of failure, which can be used as a learning opportunity. So I would say that it's okay to fail. Okay, we can fail often as long as we continue to move forward. So trying to address that fear that could be inside the workplace. Recognize and reward honest dialogue and bold behavior. We're doing a lot more of this now around listening and crucial conversations as well. Encouraging new ideas and show gratitude for employee suggestions and or feedback. Checking in with your employees. So again, trying to be able to give some tools to the leader to be able to say these are things where you can start, and tools that we have available to where you can actually, materialize this inside your own organization. Okay, next slide. And now we're going into empowered and growing, and again, the left-hand side, those are the questions that we ask. The top banner, again, is what the leader can start to ask, and then from there where you can start, right? So empowered and growing, leverage the performance review meetings to discuss career goals. We have kind of a individual development plan. That's that IDP. I know there's a lot of acronyms on here that we use at General Motors. And our performance reviews, our CAP reviews as we call them. validate for them the reach, skill development, work internally, cross-functional work to identify stretch opportunities for folks. So really to try to get the dialogue going with folks with respect to empowered and growing. And I would tell you that, again, a lot of these things were lower scores that were also in our engagement survey, but we wanted to kind of take it to the next level and put it in this quadrant of 4 things around inclusion. And then tools to leverage, making sure that folks are available to understand how to be effective inside the HRMs. I talked about being able to understand some of the other things that we do have from mentoring programs, whether it's function-driven, ERG-driven, things that we do with respect to our 10-minute drill. I've had that in a couple of them now, where employees get to have a stand-up and basically, present themselves at a staff meeting, and also ideas they may have. And again, this strength finder assessment. And next slide, please. All right. So the question then becomes, and that's my time. I know I've taken about 25 minutes. I know I was told about 30 to 45 minutes, so it went a little bit quicker than I thought. But my question to you is, how do you measure inclusion? I'd be very interested in anybody's thoughts around that, because, again, it was a journey for us to be able to understand that, hey, we measure a bunch around diversity. How are we really measuring inclusion? Is it an effective metric? And anything we can do with what the information we find? I'll tell you, with this segment inclusion survey, we started out with, just a baseline to try to understand where the organization was at. And now we're utilizing additional questions in our engagement survey, which will go out in October, where we've actually expanded the number of inclusion questions in that survey to where there's at least 2 questions from each of the quadrants. So instead of having the 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 questions, we're going to be up to 8 questions. And we're hoping to be able to get to a point where we'll have like an inclusivity index off of our workplace of choice or our engagement survey. So that's pretty much what I have today. Jan, are there any questions out there?
Okay, let's find out. Thank you. We really enjoyed your presentation. Before I present the questions that came in on chat, do we have any live questions? Again, it's *6 to unmute your line and go ahead with your question. Or you can click on this last slide and post your question as a comment. So again, any live questions? Okay, Ken, we've received several questions throughout your presentation. Keep in mind that you may have touched on these topics, but I'll ask the questions anyway in case there's something you'd like to add to or elaborate on. The first question that came in was, do you find that the elements of inclusion shift in unison? You said it was not static.
Yeah, so I said it's right. Not static, it's dynamic, and I think it depends. It could depend on the function we're talking about. It can depend on the location of the facility I'm talking about. It could depend about the demographic group we're talking about, whether we're talking race, ethnicity, or gender diversity, the LGBTQ community. So I would say it could be very, issue specific. And I would just say the discussions that are happening right now post Minneapolis, I would say, in George Floyd's death, that there's certainly I don't know if it's impacting inclusion, but I can tell you right now there's certainly more of a dialogue, and I think it's incumbent upon organizations to be able to address it effectively. And I think when they don't, then back to the point of the question, that maybe that one group will now feel like, those numbers of valued and belonging will start to drop precipitously, something that you could actually measure. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that would be my response to that.
Okay, good. Thank you. The next question, I made a note of this because it talked about survey results, and I wasn't sure if you were going to present multiple sets of them. So this came in during slide 9. And the question is, how long had GM been actively involved in a diversity and inclusion effort when it got these strong survey results? Well,
I would tell you, inclusion inclusion, maybe not so much, but diversity efforts have been going on for decades, right? So, I mean, you know, General Motors was like the first automotive company to have a supplier diversity program. We've celebrated over 50 years. We were first to have an African American on our board of directors. You know, first to have a minority dealer development program. Still the only automotive to have a women's dealer development program. You know, we have very robust, you know, centers around diversity marketing and diversity communication, and we spend a lot of time around talent analytics to be able to make sure we understand what we have from a representational standpoint inside the company. So I would say from a diversity standpoint, we've been going on this journey for a long, long time to include, you know, the first woman's CEO in the automotive industry with Mary Barrett, and I think we're the only company in the Fortune 500 that have both a woman CEO and a CFO. So it's something that we do take a lot of pride in, the things we've done. I think for us, though, when we talk diversity and inclusion, the inclusion part of it, you know, kind of that culture piece, I mean, around our strategy, we have kind of three pillars. We have talent, market, and culture, right? And so the culture piece, the inclusive culture and inclusion, I didn't feel satisfied that on our journey that we were able to capture it. And again, it's kind of based on the fact that we had the 2 or 3 questions that were kind of related to inclusion, but at the end of the day, was it really telling us that we were inclusive as an actual company? So I think that's what kind of prompted our action to kind of go deeper, understand more, and put out this segment inclusion survey where we could get more specific data. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question that came in is, what do you do to help your managers use the suggestions and tools you provide?
Yeah, I think it's important. Certainly I talk at the senior leader level first. So pretty much all my presentations went to our senior executives in the company and the vice presidents. Then from there, we have time with our HR business partners to be able to kind of use that toolkit. I mean, I know it's not like all expansive, but to be able to utilize some of the tools that we actually have and identify them so the HR VPs that are supporting other people leaders have the ability to do that in forms that may not be as senior. So I would say, and this is not, just on inclusion, we have a series of things that we do across the spectrum, the talent management spectrum, to where we'll have engagements like that. We try to empower our business HR and people HR groups that we have in the company to be able to have the tools available to be able to effectively work with their leaders. I would tell you that, hey, I put this out, these are some suggestions. They actually take it and run. Some have no questions at all. Some need a little bit of coaching to help them work with their leaders in management level. And then from there are others that really need to be pushed or really need to be supported. So, I'm trying to be fair here, that it's not like all nirvana. We have it all fixed, but we wanted to have some tools that people could actually try to react to the information they're seeing and say, okay, well, what types of stuff could I do? And it may not be all those things, but it could be one thing. And maybe that one thing is a start. So we try to be able to make sure we impress upon leaders is that, hey, it doesn't have to be a heavy lift. Do what you're comfortable with, but this is the information. You can take it as you will, but the facts are the facts. This is what people are saying. And I think a lot of that's around our engagement surveys too. Being able to understand this is what your people are saying about the organization, maybe saying about you, and what are you doing to be able to try to develop more as a leader.
Okay, good. The next question that came in was, do your senior leaders model the diversity and inclusion you're desiring from employees?
Yeah, I think the vast majority of them do. I wouldn't say it's 100%. So just to give you an idea, we'll talk about the top 220 folks in the company. I would say that it's a very strong message from our senior leadership team. So Mary Barr and her 15 direct reports. Many of those senior leaders there are, executive champions of employee resource groups, which they may not be a member of. I also have a lot of senior leaders who make up ERG Executive Network, so executives and senior executives of a particular demographic that supports an ERG have been very proactive. And I would tell you, too, that there's a lot of others that I try to say, hey, it's not a heavy lift. What types of things are you passionate about? So I would say I have a lot of contact with the senior leaders in the company, so it's incumbent upon me to understand where there are gaps amongst those leaders. I can see a lot of their data. I can sit down with them and have an honest conversation with respect to where they may have gaps. And, I think our vision and values and behaviors are kind of key here. And if you don't live our behaviors, maybe you need to go find happiness elsewhere. So, I think those people that are really resistant to that and don't buy in, we want to be able to find you other opportunities.
Okay, good. The last two questions that came in are loosely related. They're not the same. They both have to do with new hires. So I'm going to give it to you, give the two of them to you together, and you can answer them separately or as a unit if you want. The first one was, how do you acclimate managers you hire to this? And the second one was, how are you defining inclusion with new hires and ensuring they're going to align with your culture at such a massive organization?
Yeah, a couple of different ways, and I think I could probably answer them in concert here. First and foremost, everybody goes through a new hire orientation, okay? So we have diversity and inclusion that is discussed during that time, and I get it. It's like, whatever, my 45-minute block, either myself or one of my directors are in every single new hire orientation. And where we don't have the ability to do that, if a person is not available, we'll have stuff that's recorded content for folks in other regions of the world as well. So, that's first and foremost. Managers who come in, we have a thing that's called WeAreGM, which is kind of aligned to our vision of zero crashes, zero emission, and zero congestion, which the company's been putting out. So on that, we go through the behaviors in our company of how we expect you to act, what our values are. Customers are our compass, relationships matter, individual excellence around our employees, and seeking truth. And then from there, each of the behaviors is something that gets drilled into folks. And that is, thinking customer, consider the customer needs in everything you do, innovating now to see things not as they are, but as they can be, looking ahead, make decisions now with the long-term view in mind and to anticipate what lies ahead. One team, collaborate cross-functionally to achieve enterprise-wide results. Being bold, respectfully speak up, exchange feedback, and boldly share ideas without fear. It's on me. I take accountability for safety in my own actions, behaviors, and results, and then win with integrity. I have a relentless desire to win and do it with integrity. So those are the behaviors that are instilled in everybody at all levels coming in. So if you get hired in as a manager or an executive or a senior executive, everybody goes through WeAreGM. And everybody gets a block from me from a diversity and inclusion standpoint. So I don't know if I answered that question, but that would be our approach.
I think you did. Thank you. And we've covered everyone's questions. Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to share before we end the summit today?
Well, I don't know if I have any words of wisdom. I just want to thank you, Jan, for facilitating this today. Hopefully some of this was of value. I'd certainly be interested on how you measure inclusion, too. So I think it's a journey for all of us. And certainly if there's people that have better ideas out there or other ideas, we'd certainly like to try to incorporate them. But I wanted you to be able to kind of hear from us, at least our approach and what our journey has been. Hopefully it's been of value. And I hope everybody stays well and stays safe out there. Okay.
Good, Ken.
Thank you.
Good, Ken. And on behalf of all the executives on the line, I'd like to thank you for sharing such powerful ideas and key thoughts with us today. Your involvement and dedication to our profession sets a high benchmark for others to follow. For all of the participants on today's call, thank you for your continued membership and insightful questions for today's speaker. The meeting's now officially concluded. Ken, thanks so much, and everybody have a great day.
You too, Jan.
Thanks. Bye-bye.